There we go. Hello, folks. Happy Thursday. Well, thank you, StreamYard, for just hanging there and hanging there and hanging.
Thanks, StreamYard. It's like, what's
Yeah,
going
it's
on?
StreamYard. Don't blame me. You.
No, it's StreamYard. I didn't blame you, Mike.
Okay, good for once.
There's times you're to blame, but this time you're not.
No, Randy, I'm not watching March Madness. Not because I have anything against March Madness, but like I said yesterday, I'm just not into it as much as I have been in the past. I'll check into it every once in a while today, but we're focused more on hockey today, and we will start. Although the pre-show, I'm sure, is going to be
Not going to be hockey.
Not about hockey, folks.
Buckle up. It ain't hockey.
It's either one of two things, and maybe both of them. But we'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Roz.
Well, I did put an Aaron Rodgers article up on sportsology.com. People could read that if they like. I think I've hit on a few things there because it's not happened yet. So, and it could take a while. So anyhow, go read that. We're going to talk about the World Baseball Classic. Answer Thomas in the chat room. You can't suspend Diaz without pay because the MLBPA are the ones who are sanctioning the players to go and play in the World Baseball Classic, which is a Major League Baseball event. And so this is the problem with this. I wrote about it on Full Press coverage, and the issue is that players can make their own choice with this because MLB is making money on it. Now, why it happens before the season starts, I'll never know because, again, they could do it after the season. And sure, you won't get full participation, but you don't get full participation, like we said yesterday, in the World Championships, but it's still called the World Championships. At least then, if a pitcher wants to pitch 6 innings, they can. They're only going 3 innings. So really, this is like basically a fake event. Like for the most part, this is exhibition, and it's exhibition just for money. And the hitters might be able to play full bore, but pitchers aren't. So like, why are we even doing this? If Major League Baseball pulled their players out of this, there wouldn't be a tournament.
Or if Major League Baseball wasn't sponsoring it and these players wanted to play in it, then the owners could say, okay, you want to play in it? Fine. If you get hurt,
it's your own insurance. It's your own everything.
You surrender your salary for the time that you're out injured. And if that happened, none of these guys would play because they're, now they may have, pride in their countries, but if you do it like the World Championships in hockey, you do it after the season. And if you get hurt, like Eric Stahl did a few years ago, you're back for the regular season, the next regular season, because the World Championships is in May and training camp is in September. So unless it's a major, ACL tear type of thing, you'll be back. Now, in this instance, Edwin
Diaz, I think he's probably done for the year.
And this is the reason why, like, the Yankees told Nestor Cortez that he couldn't pitch because he had a slight hamstring pull. He says, "We need you for the season. You're injured. You're not going." Now they said he pulled himself out, but I'm sure he got some pressure from the Yankees to say, no, especially with all their injuries and their rotation. We need you healthy, so no, you're not pitching. It's just crap. I mean, this is a crap event. It has nothing to do with the fact that, the U.S. No, it's a crap event. It's like you've got a bunch of players playing on teams that they have little connection with, but because they're a distant relative of that particular country, they can play for them. It's a contrived event. It's programming. It's weak. It's crap. I have no interest in it. I don't know why anybody does. And now, not that I have.
It's hard to find. I'd like to know anybody in the chat room that's watched a full game. Even people that say they like it, I don't believe they've watched a full game. But the other thing with Diaz is this. Look, I get it's a freak injury, right? But the thought is, hey, if it's going to happen, it should happen in spring training because that's the only thing players should be doing in March. March baseball, other than March 30th when opening day is an aberration to begin with, and it shouldn't really happen, but it does. But at the end of the day, you look at it and you say, all right, you know what? They need to restructure this because – and the Mets aren't going to be the only team affected. Right now, they're the one affected that everybody can see. End of the day, though, it's not worth it for this tournament. It's just not worth it.
No. Just to touch on the whole Aaron Rodgers thing for a brief second, I just, like I said, it's like, there's sort of a blame game going on right now between Green Bay and Rodgers and the Jets, and them trying to get as much as they can for him. And I mean, I think eventually it's going to end up happening. But for those
June 1st,
for those who want this thing to be over with, it's not going to be anytime soon. It's going to drag out. It's going to, and I like you were saying yesterday, there is a fatigue factor here. Nobody wants to hear about this anymore, and now it's just going to get dragged out. And the Packers don't care. I mean, they're looking to get as much as they can for the guy.
Right. And they have a quarterback. The Jets, look, they have Wilson, but they don't want to use Wilson right now. They want him to learn from somebody. That's why they're bringing him back, but they don't have anybody. So the Jets are the ones who really have lost the leverage here. They should have set a deadline date. They should have set a price ahead of time. They didn't do any of these things. And Rodgers, all he did was pour gasoline on the fire. So, whatever. It's gonna burn for a while, guys. I mean, this is not gonna end soon.
Yeah. Surprised that Mike doesn't like something. Yeah. Thank you. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Thursday, March 16th, 2023.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Lagello, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Okay, let's start with, I'd say the most prominent event that occurred last night in an 8-5 loss for the St. Louis Blues against the Minnesota Wild, and that was Jordan Binnington going banana hammock on the ice again as he lost it with Ryan Hartman on the ice, and it almost ended up in a goalie fight, which I would have loved to have seen. And of course, the buzz killers, the linesmen and the referees stopped that from happening. But now Binnington is going to be in front of the NHL's Department of Player Safety. He is going to get a hearing, as Tony in the chat referenced, and he's probably going to get suspended a couple games. So
yeah, no question he'll get suspended a couple games. I will tell you this. I've always defended Binnington and his play. And look, last year showed that he can play in this league. But yesterday showed you that his temper derails his play. And that, to me, is the biggest problem here. Look, we all like a goalie fight. Don't get me wrong. If you would have seen Fleury fight, that's fine. But what he did in this game was sort of irrational. He just challenged the whole bench when he gave up a lead in the game. Like, that's the way I took it. I didn't watch the game, but that's what I was taking from what I was seeing in tweets and videos and other things. And again, this is a guy who needs to get a grip. He needs to get a grip because otherwise he is going to ruin his own career.
Well, I mean, and I didn't see him. I know he did the Russell Crowe Gladiator.
Yeah, that's why I tweeted that. Yes.
Now, but the thing was, did he do that toward the bench? Because that was basically what Dan Cloutier did in a game against the Islanders a while back. And this is probably, 15, 16 years ago.
Yes.
At Nassau Coliseum, he skated right around the bench and basically said, come on.
Now,
and
it's like, to his credit, when he went later in his career, he calmed down. Like he realized there was a point where he was doing that too much too. I don't think Binnington feels like he's reached that point, but I know he has.
But there's a school of thought here that this is on purpose, that Binnington is being, he's sort of being like a troll. He's sort of being, the way he works himself up is to do this stuff.
Yes. And he look, we covered that during the Stanley Cup. I was there. He was asked about it. He likes living on the edge that way, right? But I could tell you that if the media around that team is kind of like looking at it like, all right, look, we're getting tired of this. I'm sure some players are too, Mike. That's the thing here. After a while, this kind of act gets old in the locker room.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I mean, they're out of the playoffs. They're not going to make the playoffs. So I'm sure that probably a lot of his teammates, if you could read their minds, or basically say, let's get this season over with and restart and not have to get into, bench clearing brawls and things of that nature with the team, that's a big, tough team, Minnesota. So I don't know if they really want to get into a battle like that with them.
Well, but Binnington probably could take Fleury, but Fleury had just seen enough. And that's where I give him credit, because as far as I know, he's never had a fight in his life. So that was interesting to me that he was willing to do that.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, we'll find out what kind of suspension we get out of Binnington. I would assume probably a couple games, maybe 3.
He might get 3 because
it's not it's not an in-person hearing. It's just a hearing.
Yeah, over the phone you can get up to 3.
Right. So in the playoff race, we'll focus on the East.
Okay.
Because there were 2 games that I think were key. One, not a surprising outcome on the West Coast. The Islanders fell behind early, but then rallied and beat the Anaheim Ducks, who are, obviously mostly focused on Connor Bedard and the lottery. They beat them 6-3. But the game,
Mussolini is anyhow.
I'm sorry. Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. But the game that was really key was the Washington Capitals 5-4 shootout victory over the Buffalo Sabres last night. And I didn't see a lot of this game. I just saw the highlights afterward. But this is a game where Buffalo's up 3-1 going into the third period, 4-2 halfway through the third period. Lose the lead with 1 minute and 8 seconds to go on Tom Wilson's goal, and I'm pretty sure, yeah, Ovechkin was back. Okay, he had sat out the previous game.
At the one game, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, and Charlie Lindgren, their backup, was in goal. So this was a game that Buffalo had to win, and in the end, they didn't. And I blame, in part, their bad defense because they're a young team, but their goaltending let them down.
Yeah. So just to answer also the chat room, like Mike knew that Pierre Engvall is a good player. Like he's going to do fine for the Islanders. Like he knew that. Like he didn't want to trade Engvall if he could help it, but it just happened. So like that's not a surprise that he's playing well for the Islanders.
Well, I'll address that in a minute, but continue.
Yeah. As far as for this game, for whatever reason, I don't know why this sent like shockwaves for fans and media, because again, Mike and I both felt like Kevin Adams dropped the ball, not getting a goalie. Like you were in the race.
Yeah. You
could have gotten a goalie for like a 3rd, 4th, 5th round pick. You had plenty of picks. Why didn't you do that? Like you knew your goaltending was an issue, and instead he sort of went along with the plan, and he's living and dying with this goaltending, and he's dying. Now, again, nobody's going to kill him because it wasn't a guarantee they were going to get in the playoffs. But they were in a hunt, and now clearly they're pretty much out of the hunt.
Yeah, no. I mean, I looked it up this morning. They're 6 points out of the second wild card with 3 games in hand. So they need, they obviously need to get hot, and they need the Islanders or Pittsburgh to get cold. And I've said this before the deadline. I mean, I understand what Kevin Adams' marching orders were. Let's find out what we got within these young guys. Let's, play them. Let's stick with them. They weren't against going out and making moves at the deadline. They brought in Jordan Greenway, and Jordan Greenway has a couple years left on his contract, making, I think, $3 million.
Yeah.
But they did send out players at the deadline to sort of balance out the books, like trading Anders Bjork, who was down in the minors, who was making close to 2. So they cleared that salary out. So I just think that this was Sabres ownership saying, we're not going to spend too much money. And, are you telling me that James Reimer, who was available in San Jose, making, I think, in the 2s, you could have gotten him for a 3rd round pick? You telling me that he wouldn't be an upgrade against over 41-year-old Craig Anderson, who can only play 1 game a week, and Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, who 1 game looks like a superstar and 1 game looks like trash.
Right. And
Eric Comrie, who has been hurt now for the 2nd time this year. So on the injury scale, he is tied with Matt Murray, Russ.
He is.
But this is the thing. Okay, if your main goal for this season, if you're the Buffalo Sabres, is to find out whether Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen can be your number 1 goaltender, I think you found out, because clearly he can't. Now, is he an NHL goalie? Sure. Is he a number 1? I don't think
So
so.
far, no. I mean, I would wait till he's 25 because he hasn't played enough games. But I get why the organization's sort of taking this tack because they have Devin Levi, and I guess they're just out of patience. So maybe they'll trade Pekka Luukkonen at some point, and that may happen at the draft. You never know. So we'll see. But in the interim, they're not making the playoffs, and so I don't know why the shock is there, but I guess it is.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, there, you'd have to say what is the main culprit for the Buffalo Sabres not making the playoffs, and I would say that the main culprit is their team defense. Now they're a young team and they're one of the best offensive teams in the league, but defensively they have work to do, and that's something that Don Granato will work on over the next couple of years. They just have to tighten up defensively, and as Dahlin and Power gain more experience, well, Dahlin is experienced already, but as Power gains more experience, and Samuelson and some of their blue liners, they'll be better off overall defensively. But goaltending wise, I'm sorry, right now their goaltending is not up to snuff.
They're the sixth worst goals against team in the league.
Yeah, their goaltending is not as good as Washington's. It's sure as hell not as good as the Islanders.
Here's who's shockingly who it's not as good as: the Coyotes, the Canadiens, the Blackhawks, and the Oilers, who all have goaltending problems.
They're getting out goaltended by Alex Stalock and Peter Mrazek.
I told you, Alex Stalock. I told you, man.
We always like Alex Stalock. Well, you're right, Mike. I mean, I just jumping in, but I mean, obviously, and the one thing, I mean, they could have gone for a goalie at the deadline.
Yeah,
but I think really, I kind of support their not going for a goalie at the deadline, just because.
No,
I mean that team is obviously going to be good. They're going to be exciting. They're going to be fun.
No doubt about it.
But they're also going to be mincemeat for the Bruins. I mean, it's like that's like
no.
Honestly. For what they would have had to give up to get a goalie that was significantly better than what they have.
A third-round pick.
But you think Reimer is Reimer good enough to get
Reimer is better than Luukkonen. Yes.
But you don't want to shoot down Luukkonen right there. I mean, just give guys. I mean, there's a big I've talked to Granato about this. And there's a big feeling of closeness and camaraderie in that locker room. Right now they're building.
Don't you feel like there's a point where Luukkonen's going to get shot down anyhow, Eck, with the way?
Yeah, it's quite possible. But right now, this season, to do it,
yeah,
I think they're building on something. And what I wanted to talk about today goes right along these lines.
Okay.
Because I'm going to talk about what every team's expectation is going in the season and where they are right now, and it's pretty interesting. Because I went through all the teams, and and you can disagree. I'm sure you'll disagree with some of my expectations I have for some of the teams, but. The Sabres' expectations I put as battle for a playoff spot. Like that's what they expect them to do, right? Battle for a playoff spot. The expectation wasn't to make the playoffs.
Yeah, but this is okay. This is
right. Look, I don't disagree with that premise, but they were there where they could have made.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, they could have.
And all they had to do, not mortgage the future. No, they didn't have to do that. All they had to do is make a tinkering move. A slight improvement, a veteran guy who could get hot and steal you points, and instead they, I like the Greenway move. That was a good move, but you could make the Reimer move or another goaltender move as a rental because now you didn't know Comrie was going to get hurt, but it's a situation where this fan base is pissed off right now. Yeah, they are. They haven't made a playoffs in a dozen years.
Oh, yeah, no, they're definitely. You're right. I mean, they're not pissed off right now. They're pissed off for the.
It would be nice if this organization. It'd be nice if this organization listened to their fan base for one friggin' time.
All right. I mean, we can say that, but the future has never been brighter than it is right now for the Sabres. I mean, this is absolute. Don't you agree? I mean, this is the best.
Oh, that part is true.
Yes.
I mean, it took way too long to get here. I'll give you that. But where it is right now, if you're a Sabres fan, you're pretty excited. I mean,
I agree. The future is bright. They have a lot of talent. They're going to make changes in the offseason. Probably they'll probably address the goaltending. But they had a chance to break a 12-year streak of ineptitude and like this and act like this. the Buffalo Bills made the playoffs. I think it was 4 years ago. They got in by hook or by crook at the last game of the season, and they lost in the first round to Jacksonville, which was an embarrassing loss. But they had been out of the playoffs for almost, I think it was close to 20 years. Right. 1999 was the last time, so it was like 18, 19 years. They had to break that streak of ineptitude psychologically, not only for the fan base, but for the organization. And then they've had success ever since. This organization missed on an opportunity to break that skid. And they may make the playoffs next year, but they could have learned something by getting their ass kicked by Boston.
Here's what I wonder.
I feel like I've been on the other. I'm sorry, Russ, but I feel like I've been on the other side of this argument with you, Mike, before. Like I feel like you're the team that says, like, why would you want to get into the playoffs to get beaten up by Boston?
Well, just to have the experience.
And I've always said that. I've always been like, you got to make the playoffs. You got to try to make the playoffs, and that's usually where I am. But there is the only reason I'm not that way is because of talking to them, and this is a tight knit locker room, and anything they need, anything to do that the way it sounds like what they needed, what they thought was good enough to do.
You can't tell me that John Granado would not want to make the playoffs.
Oh no, I'm not saying he doesn't want to not make the playoffs. And listen, he doesn't make the call. He doesn't make the call, and he's not the GM.
It's not like they would have had to trade Jack Quinn for James Reimer. It was a third round pick. That's what it would have cost.
That's legit. I mean, it's legit. I mean,
who else you got? I don't know if we're getting anywhere else with the Sabres, but I agree. The future's bright. We agree with you.
Well, since there were very few games, I mean, so we went. So I have to humbly unbrag because I went 1-3 last night, thanks to the fact that I opened my big mouth on this show. But I did lose two of the games on shootouts, so it's like I was pretty darn close, but still losses. No way, no.
Loss is a loss, Zach.
Loss is a loss is a loss. I know. So I'll give you that. But it's only our second out of 13 now. 13, our second losing night out of 13. So that's not too bad. But I do want to talk about expectations, because I think that's a good thing to get into here. And I'm going to bring up my list here, and I'll ask you first. Hopefully you haven't. I'm sure you haven't read my blog. Why would you? So no, I'm just kidding because I just put it up like just seconds ago. So no, but I don't want you to look. I'm going to kind of guess this to go through. I'm going to go through my teams here, and I wrote down on the blog. I'm just going to bring it up here so I can look at it. And
I think Mike's reading it now.
Don't read it, Mike. You're not reading it, right?
No.
I know. I trust you. I trust Mike. Mike's an amazing person. All right, here we go. I'm going to bring up the website, HockeyBuzz.com. It just says the website can't be reached. Oh, there we go. That's good. No, here we go. All right, we're in. All right, sorry, it's been a day. All right, here we go. How far do teams need to go to avoid failure? Is the name of the failure. It's the name of the thing. All right, so I don't know why I'm so to the side here. Sorry, the whole house isn't just right. Anyway, okay, here we go. So Boston Bruins, Stanley Cup Final. You're supposed to guess first, but I'm saying Stanley Cup Final. You agree?
Yes.
Yeah.
Anything less is a failure. Toronto Maple Leafs.
Second round.
Do you think they have to win one round?
Yes. One round. That's it.
I put win 2 rounds.
Not a chance.
You don't think they will win 2 rounds? But
No. I think if they beat Tampa Bay, the fan base will say the seal has been broken, and they'll be satiated.
Think so?
But
yeah.
Now, if they there's a bad echo here.
I'm sorry. Let me try to make things different ways.
If they give Boston a run for their money and lose in 6 or 7 games, I don't think the fan base is going to be pissed off.
All right. Yeah, I can see. If they have to be competitive though in the second round, right? They can't just win a round and then get swept.
Well, I mean, I'll say this: if they beat Tampa and then they get swept by Boston, I think Dubas is safe.
He's safe, right? So what do you think?
At that point, he'd be safe. Yes.
You think they get swept? He's okay. I think he's okay if they win a round 2, but I think this is one of the only teams you could ever say that hasn't made the playoffs in like how many years or whatever, and really needs to win 2 rounds almost to like feel like they're doing anything.
They're an anomaly at this point because there probably isn't another organization that the bar is so low for the talent that they have.
Yeah. I mean, and winning 2 rounds is a hard thing to do. Winning 1 round is a hard thing to do. I mean, it's a tough playoff no matter how you face it, right? Tampa.
Conference final.
Russ?
I think conference finals right.
I went a little bit harder. I went Stanley Cup final because these fans are used to the Stanley Cup final down there. That's what they're.
Yeah.
And until they're not in the Stanley Cup final, that's what you expect them to be in. Kind of. It's been 3 years in a row now, Stanley Cup finals. So the two teams that which makes it really hard on Toronto. Obviously, the two teams that they want to play against are two teams that both think they're going to both expect to go to the Stanley Cup finals or thereabouts. So that's pretty tough. Carolina,
conference final.
I'm going to say conference final for them too.
That's what I have to do. I win 2 rounds. I'm doing it by rounds, but you win 2 rounds is conference final, right?
Right.
New Jersey.
Second one.
It's funny about New Jersey because I think expectations are higher than what we think behind closed doors. So I'm going to say conference final.
Log off and log back on because the echo came when you met.
All right. I'll be back.
Try that.
Yeah, I think it's conference final. Should I talk about the college free agents while we're waiting for Eck to get back on?
Well, no, he should be back any second. But I want to devote some time to the college free agents.
Okay.
But I mean, this is the thing. Boston, because they've had the season for the ages. I mean, if anything other than Stanley Cup final would be disappointing. Let's just say that. Now.
All right, how's this? Better?
It's gone.
Yes.
All right. So New Jersey, you guys think?
New Jersey, I think if they don't finish in first place and they beat the Rangers, that'll make their season.
That's a good.
I don't think so.
If they beat the Rangers, they're good.
No, I don't
if they beat Carolina in the first round for some reason, it's different. Maybe, but I mean, if they lose to Carolina, but
especially a weakened Carolina,
I think their owner is expecting more. That's what I'm going to
more than that.
Yeah, then he's delusional.
He might be. I think the fan base will be thrilled with winning run round. I think because this team wasn't really expected to make the playoffs, and I mean they were on the borderline.
All right, I'll say it this way: I voted, on a different website. I put Fitzgerald should be GM of the year.
Wow,
and I believe that. But I'll also tell you that I think to get Josh Harris to spend more money next year, he is going to need to see more than just beating the Rangers in the first round now, because I think he's already spent the money on Timo Meier. He might say, "Hey, that's it right now."
Well, not yet. Not yet. He hasn't spent.
Well, he will. He will.
Well, you'd hope.
And he might stop dead there and say, "That's it. That is your limit." Because right now, at some point, he's going to want to make money. And
but remember, New Jersey's got a lot of money coming off the books too, so they could sign Timo Meier. Ryan Graves is a UFA, Miles Wood is a UFA, Tatar is a UFA, Severson's so they could sign Meier for $8-9 million and not spend as much as they're spending this year. So
but
it might be money in, money out.
No, but hold on. The Devils are averaging 14.958, which is the 4th worst team in the league. And Josh Harris, even though he's a billionaire, he's not going to want to continue losing money and keep spending to the cap. And I think he needs to see more than the first round because he has brought in a premium talent in Meier.
Right.
And I think they're expecting more. That's just my feeling that he is. I think the fan base, you're right, Eck. I think the fan base's expectations are lower, but I think his is higher.
That's interesting. All right, so the Rangers.
Stanley Cup final.
Yeah.
That's what I have too. Yeah.
Yep. True.
Now, that Patrick Kane trade, and then the fact they went to the conference final last year, you're at the point, Stanley Cup final or bust, right?
Yep.
That's a tough order.
It is a tough order, but based on where they finished last year, based on what they had to do to add this talent this year, it's logical.
Yeah. How about the Pittsburgh Penguins?
I think if they get to if they win one round, I think that satiates everybody.
Yeah.
Kind of where I am too. I was torn on that one because, Pittsburgh is such a thing, but the way they went out last year, I think changed that a little bit. I think that this year it'll be like if they can win a round. Normally for Pittsburgh, it would have to be winning 2 rounds. I mean, they have the longest streak of going to the playoffs in the NHL. So how about the Islanders?
I'm going to tell you
making the playoffs.
At this point, making the playoffs, but what were the expectations for the Islanders?
I think management's expectations would be having to win 2 rounds. I think the fans' expectations is getting to the conference final. I think the fans have higher expectations.
That's the same, right? Winning 2 rounds in conference final is the same.
Oh, well, then 1 round. Sorry. Yeah, you're right. I think the fans have higher expectations than the actual management right now.
Good point. That's interesting. I don't totally disagree. I put win, run, round, but I do think the management might be right. How about Florida?
I think they're at the point of just making the playoffs.
Yeah.
They are now, but I think the expectation is definitely still to win 1 round. I think the reality is that they, it's going to be hard for them to do that. Obviously,
It is.
who they're going to play if they get there, but
yeah, if they're playing Boston.
But the idea is to call the season a failure or not. You have to look at the entire.
I don't think they would call it a failure if they made the playoffs based on the way they started the season.
Right.
Yeah, it's possible.
Exactly.
How about Capitals?
Making the playoffs.
Just making the playoffs.
That was their expectation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sabres.
It's over.
I actually wrong. I wrote make the playoffs. That's why I wrote battle for the playoffs. But
Here's the Sabres sign here, folks. There you go.
their expectation was to make the playoffs. I wrote, which is probably a little.
I don't think it was when the season started, but I think it should have been by mid-season, and that's why we had the art. So yeah.
Clearly, their expectation was not to make the playoffs because they didn't do anything to get into the playoffs.
Yeah. How about Ottawa?
Their expectation was to make the playoffs.
Remember, going back to the summer, they add DeBrincat,
Yeah.
they had Talbot. They said that they needed 1 defenseman. They ended up getting Chychrun, but they spent so much time in not getting Chychrun that and now their goaltending is it's right now it's Kevin Mandolisi and Matt Sogard. Both goaltenders are hurt at this point. Just getting into the playoff race and having consequential games the last 2 weeks would be their expectation.
Yeah. Detroit.
Their expectation right now is qualifying for the lottery.
Yeah, but that's not what I'm talking. I'm talking about will the season be a failure?
No, I think they wanted to have consequential games down the stretch. I don't think
Right, that's battle. I call it battle for the playoffs. I think that's there would be a playoff battle. I agree. You agree with that, Russ?
Yes, I agree.
They kind of were. They were. They not until recently, but they did stay in a battle for the playoffs for a while there.
They did.
The Flyers.
They clearly had the idea they're going to make the playoffs. Or
Expectation was no question make the playoffs. Russ.
2 months ago, he said we're just 5 points out. So they clearly that was the idea.
Going into the season, they thought they were going to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
As did a lot of people who prognosticated, but they did not. Obviously, the Blue Jackets.
Well, with the signing of Goudreau, I think they wanted a challenge, but that was a joke.
I think they wanted to make the playoffs. I mean, I think that they're they've been a team that has made the playoffs a lot.
They wanted to make it, and idiot Russ Cohen picked them to make it, and they failed miserably.
So that's the Eastern Conference. All right. So the interesting thing about the Eastern Conference, we all agree.
Montreal. Their intention was jump into the St. Lawrence River.
How can I not put Montreal here? Montreal was just kind of survived the season. They were.
Yeah, they really had no expectations. But I will tell you this: I do think come next year there are going to be expectations because now you're 2.5 seasons into St. Louis. You're now multiple seasons into new management.
Yeah.
Slavkovsky and Caulfield will be healthy.
Right. Expectations have to be higher in Montreal than they are right now. Bad contracts or not, they have to start doing something. Amazingly, the fans are showing up. They're right near the top of the league in attendance.
Right.
It's not the top, but
they're showing up.
They're going to have to show them something.
So they were the only team I would say in the Eastern Conference that didn't think that they were really legitimately a playoff team. I think everybody else had a feeling that they were close enough to be a playoff team in the East. Agree with that? Montreal?
No.
Say that again?
I think Montreal's the only team that thought they were definitely not a playoff team. I think everybody else.
Yes.
Everybody else in the East had a feeling that they could be a playoff, or could be, or should be, or be a playoff team, or battle for a playoff spot at least.
Yeah. No, I agree.
All right, West, Dallas.
Stanley Cup final.
Final, huh?
Conference final.
Yeah, I'm with conference final too.
I think they see it. I think they see an opening, especially after the additions they made at the deadline and how well Sagan and Ben have bounced back. I think their expectation is to be the West representative in the Stanley Cup.
It has probably grown over the year too. That's a good point.
Yes.
But the start of the season probably was win 2 rounds. Maybe now it's Stanley Cup Finals because Colorado fallen off a little bit. Minnesota.
Second round.
Yeah, I think second round is right.
I think for them it's win 2 rounds. I really do. I think that they've been battling. They've won 1 round a couple times. They have not gotten past the second round ever. Well, and not ever, but since for a very long time.
Yeah, I think that's what management's take is for sure.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's really, what I mean. I think that's what they would tell you, but I don't know if that's what they thought would actually happen.
So, some people are saying cup final for the Wild in the chat room.
No, I think, look, Garen will tell you, and like every other GM, after making the moves, I think we can make it to the Stanley Cup. And I think in his heart of hearts, he would probably say, if we win around, this is still a pretty good season considering the dead cap money and everything else. But he can't say it publicly. That's the problem.
Right. Colorado.
Stanley Cup final.
Stanley Cup. I put Stanley Cup too. But
they could lose the cup. They could do the same thing other teams have, like Chicago and Tampa, and lose the cup, but they have to get to the cup.
Yeah, it's probably better to say Stanley Cup final because it's not a failure if you get the Stanley Cup final. But
right, it would be impossible to actually say that about a team if they get to the Stanley Cup final. Call them a failure.
I mean, Boston's in that boat too. Like obviously, when they have a season like they've had, right? It's like Vegas
Cup final.
Yeah, I'm with you. I agree that's their expectation. They've done everything like that to do that. I mean, and when I was doing this, I said, here's what I was taking into account. You have to take into account their recent success and failures, this season's expectations, the moves they made at the deadline, the current longevity of the team's GM and coach, and the city's mood for hockey.
So here's the thing, though, Ek. So the other night post game, right? I go to the Vegas locker room first, and I'm going to tell you 99% of the time when you go to the opposing locker room, whether the goalie goes first or last or whatever, you still see the goalie getting the equipment off.
Yeah, right to the right.
Empty stall. Pads are there.
Really?
Gone. Now, I don't know if he interviewed last or if he interviewed at all, but the point is he's still not friendly with the media. That's obvious. And I don't know how that's going to play in the locker room, but Eichel spoke. And I know that Bluger spoke, and I don't know who went after him. But Eichel had he was loose. And I told Mike the other day he was laughing. He was talking. He had him at the point on the power play. They were messing around with that. But when he talked about, I asked him about consistency with the team, right? Mm-hmm. And he said, since the All-Star break, he doesn't have the stat, but he knows they're way more consistent and winning, most of their series. And so that told me, yes, they believe they're a cup team. They do believe that. Yeah.
I mean, Quick's going to be feast or famine. He's going to go one way or the other. It's either going to not work at all or it's going to work incredibly well.
I still think if Thompson's back, though, Thompson will be the guy.
I think so. Yeah. But they won't lose in the playoffs without putting Quick in there. That's my theory. So if they're down 3 games in a series, or
I think you're going to use Quick as the use it. If you have to break the glass and use it,
right, like emergency, and he's perfect goalie for that because he could come in and just change everything around. Like he has a mystique about him.
I honestly, even if Logan Thompson comes back in a couple weeks before the playoffs, I think Game 1 goaltender is Quick.
Yeah, maybe. All right, so the Kings.
I think make the playoffs.
No, they made the playoffs last year. I think it's at least 1 round.
Okay.
To me, it's 1 round too because they went 7 games with Edmonton last year.
That's fair.
And you only need to win 1 more game to beat last year. Seattle.
Oh, make the playoffs.
It's definitely just make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think battle for the playoffs going into the year. I think they were they're going to battle. Now obviously they're in make the playoff mode, but going into the year, Winnipeg.
Make the playoffs. Even though it should be higher than that, it's make the playoffs.
I think so.
No, I think it's win a round.
I think it's win 1 round too.
It could be, but all right, let's talk about Winnipeg for just a minute because you're such a weird organization because they have a small arena. They sell out most of the time, from what I understand, at least. Do you ever get the buzz or the feeling that their expectations are we have to win a Stanley Cup or get to? I never ever feel that. The fans may feel that. But I never hear management say that. They always are understated.
They are very – I mean, they had Cheveldaev and Paul Maurice, 2 of the most understated people you can imagine for a long time.
Right.
So it's not like either of those guys are going to give you anything that's going to be controversial. They're both Paul Maurice can be a little bit, but yeah, you're right. I mean, I think the fans, there was a big disappointment. Winnipeg fans I have a couple friends with season tickets there, and they said that the talk around the arena every night was Jonathan Toews all year. Like, and they kept saying that Jonathan Toews is going to come here. He's going to come here. He's going to be here. That was like one.
It would have made sense too.
Would have made tons of sense, and that was a big disappointment for them. But the way their first line's playing right now, I mean, they put Niederreiter up there now.
Like, they shouldn't be set up the way they are. Like, it shouldn't be Hellebuck or bust, but it is.
Right, and Hellebuck is inconsistent. So it's a tough one. I mean, it's a tough one. They really are in a spot there. All right, Nashville.
Make the playoffs.
Make the playoffs. I said battle for the playoffs, but
I still think they make the playoffs. I do, based on the way they've sort of done it with their contracts before they broke it all up at the deadline here. Yeah. I still think secretly they still thought they were going to make the playoffs.
Probably right. I mean, I had usually high expectations on them at the beginning of the year.
Especially after they made the playoffs last year, and even though they got their ass kicked by Colorado, that
but they didn't have Sabres, so everyone was like, okay, what can you do? Like, if they had Sabres, that would have been a better series, probably, for sure.
Right.
Calgary.
Oh, it's going a couple rounds. They get out the final.
I'll say this: beat Edmonton. That was their goal.
Sure. I think win 2 rounds is right. I think you're right about that. I wonder what our Mr. Randy Workman will say about that, but I'm pretty sure they're going to say 2 rounds. Going to say win 2 rounds. I think that's where they were at. Vancouver.
Oh, please! Winning a free single order of wings from Buffalo Wild Wings.
Going into the year, they higher expectations than that.
No, it was make the playoffs. It was.
Yeah.
And then expectations lowered quickly.
Remember, they had the beginning of the year. They had this horrible thing where they lost like a whole bunch of games. They had 3-goal leads in. It's just like crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Like that.
Honestly, though, I don't even know what Vancouver is anymore as an organization. I don't. I don't know what they're doing with their trades. I don't know what they're thinking about their future. I don't know what they are.
They continue to be the Flyers of the West.
They are.
Even the good time Vancouver Canucks are like the Flyers of the West,
right?
Where they just mirror each other all the time.
Well, I always said the Flyers were the Canucks East, so
I mean, it's interesting because they always have they're usually pretty good. They're usually a playoff team. They sometimes have a really good season and go really far.
See,
just beat Edmonton. There you go.
It's like they're 16-17-1 at home, 13-15-4 on the road, and if you tell me they're exactly that next year at this time, I won't be shocked.
Right. St. Louis Blues.
Well, their expectation was to make the playoffs, but clearly,
I think their conference finals were.
No, I think their expectation was higher than that because
really?
if they didn't get screwed by Kadri running into Binnington, they thought that they had a chance to win it all. But now they've stripped it down. So, I mean, if you're talking about the beginning of the year, I think that it was probably conference final or Stanley Cup final, and now
I'm surprised at that, but I'm not saying you're wrong. It probably is true.
Yeah.
I don't know how they could have looked at that team and thought that, especially knowing that Tarasenko, they were going to have to trade him or do something with that.
Yeah,
I
think they were going to be prepared to let him walk if they made a run to the Cup final.
They did get them getting pretty good for him, honestly.
But now, again, I want to just say this about St. Louis. They're in trouble. They're acting like a team now that is worried about losing attendance. So they're going to do everything they can to act like they're still a contender. And if they take a couple of steps back, they are going to have a hard time because a lot of their prospects are up. They are pretty close to the cap. Maybe now after the trades, they have a little bit more breathability, but they're looking to just fill the cap again and act like they're in contention. And I don't know if they are, especially, Binnington becomes more unhinged. Right. That's a big problem too.
It's a big problem. Big problem. Arizona I put just to survive the season.
Stay in Arizona.
Get 6 people into that bandbox piece of crap.
I think it's just
so unfortunate, but it's a reality.
I just think it's just to stay in Arizona. I think that is the goal.
Now Anaheim, going into the year,
Connor Bedard.
Yeah, win the lottery. I think that was the goal.
I think they can battle for the playoffs, and they thought they could. I mean, they did last year.
I think they acted like a team that knew they were going to be bad.
Yeah.
And
when you go out and you sign a defenseman for the specific purpose of trading him, which
and
is
they failed on that. That was a failure.
Right. They didn't get a first round pick for Klingberg. They got Nikita Nestorenko. It's like,
Which,
okay.
he's a decent player, but we don't know. We don't know what he'll do in the NHL. I like him,
but he's not a first round pick.
He's not a first round pick. He's not a first round pick.
Chicago was also to survive the season.
Bedard.
Yeah. I mean, they showed that at the draft that they were dumping already.
But all right, so let's talk about the Blackhawks too for a minute, because while they did want to be near the bottom, at some point they're going to have to sort of show a plan too. And they got rid of Kane. They still don't really have a plan that's etched in stone there. Right. They have Nazar. They have a couple of prospects, but they're not loaded.
They didn't just get rid of Kane. They got rid of Kane. They got rid of McCabe, who was a guy who had 2 years left in his contract. They got rid of Domi, who wanted to stay in Chicago supposedly.
For sure. Yeah.
So then we're expecting Chicago now to be bad for the next 3 to 4 years, even though they've been bad for the last few.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
before you know it, it's going to be 5-6 years. That they've been horrible.
Yeah, there's certain things about I was on the O&B podcast last night. It was kind of fun talking to those guys.
Those are good guys. I've been on there.
Really good guys. They like you guys. They watched our show. It's fun to talk to them. So we talked about like a lot of this kind of stuff. Like how long does it take for teams to rebuild? And the Flyers are like Chicago in a way that these are teams that it's not impossible to get people to go there. Like this is like they are. Yeah,
it's an attractive market,
especially Chicago. The Flyers are losing a little bit of that, but they haven't lost it completely. I mean, they're still not an original six, but they're in as close as you can get to an original 6 team. So there still is that thing. So as opposed to like other teams to try to rebuild, is a lot harder, I think. So I think it can go a little bit quicker in some of those cities. Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, look. Korchinski is a really good prospect, right? If he hits big and turns into like Duncan Keith, that helps him. But I'm just looking over their prospects. Last year was a pretty good draft. The ones before that weren't so great. I think they have at least 2 more years of being bad ahead of them, at least. Yeah. And they've already been bad for the last 2.
I don't disagree with that. San Jose would be battle for the playoffs. I think they thought they could battle for the playoffs.
Surfing USA.
I mean, obviously they couldn't, but there's no question that in San Jose it wasn't like they weren't in Chicago or Arizona's spot of survive the season.
Their goal was to shed as many bad contracts as they can, and they failed miserably because they didn't.
Let's look at the reality of disappointment, Mike. This is right up your alley. The reality of disappointment. Okay. Only 2 teams get to the Stanley Cup final. We said 5 hoped to 2. All right. Only 4 teams win 2 rounds. We said 11 hope to. Only 8 teams win 1 round. We said 20 hope to. And only 16 teams make the playoffs, and we said 26 hope to. So it's I mean that is how hard it is. Like that's the reality of the disappointment that you see throughout the league, right? It's tricky. It's a tricky one for sure.
It is tricky. There's no doubt. And look, I think Kevin's right. I don't think anybody has the exact answer for a rebuild in the NHL anymore.
Yeah.
I think there used to be. I think even I felt like I had a good handle on it 3 or 4 years ago now. But now that we see teams like Ottawa and Edmonton, and they just even Edmonton should be way better than they are, and they're not. Ottawa should definitely be better than they are, and they're not.
Yeah. When you have 4 number 1 overall picks in the span of 6 years, and it takes you another 7 years to make a conference final, your organization is incompetent. And that's what the Edmonton Oilers are. Now, they have 2 of the best players in the NHL in Draisaitl and McDavid. They've added players like Ekholm, and they drafted Nurse, and there's some other talent there other than those 2. But I still think that their flaws are so fatal that they're not going to be able to get back to where they were last year.
Yeah, I do want to say this to the chat room. Bedard will not reject Arizona. There never will be. There's no prospect now that's going to reject the team. They just don't do it anymore.
You don't think there'll be a Lindros type situation?
No.
I don't think Bedard will be. I don't think Bedard will, but either. But I think it's possible you can see that. It depends.
I just hope for the league's sake that he does not go to Arizona. because for the betterment of the league, that team needs
has to go to Montreal, Mike. That's where the betterment of the league is got to go.
For the betterment, keep living that pipe dream. For the betterment of the league, that franchise in the Southwest needs to die. It needs to be moved, and it needs to be moved quickly.
See, I wanted to go to Anaheim simply so I could see Zegras and Bedard together.
Yeah.
That was how close Anaheim came to getting Crosby.
Yeah, Bobby Ryan instead of Crosby. Yeah,
I mean, I was at that famous in New York in that crazy old house. It was the weirdest situation
it's almost like James Van Riemsdyk and Patrick Kane.
Were you there? Were you there when they did the ping pong ball thing for Crosby?
No,
okay, I got invited to that.
I was at the CBC building in Toronto in 2016 when they got Matthews.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So, I'm sitting there and it was a strange thing because you remember coming out of the last year, everybody had a shot at Crosby.
Right.
Everybody had ping pong balls in there. It was like pretty even. I think if I remember right, it wasn't like any. There was slightly.
No, it was stacked. It was like teams like Toronto had like 3 because I think they had traded their first round. They only had like 3 balls, whereas Pittsburgh had like 20 or something like that. Yeah. So you had a chance, but you didn't have
everybody had at least one ball in there.
Right.
And that was what was kind of fun about it. I kind of like that. I kind of wish it was like that always because I think that's kind of fun. But
so I do have a couple of college free agents to talk about.
Yeah, please.
One of them was taken already. 2 of them aren't. But the Aiden McDonough, a lot of people have asked me about him. Vancouver signed him. Yep. Northeastern kid. I got to tell you, I haven't seen the best play out of him as far as what he might be in the NHL. He certainly is really good at Northeastern, but I don't love him. I'll be honest. I think he's in maybe a little below NHL average player. Okay. So I don't know if Vancouver really got a stud there. I did, on the Locked On Flyers show, I did talk about Jackson Nelson because he's right now playing with Minnesota. He's on what I think is an amazing power play with Nyes and Cooley and Snuggerud. And if you watch any of Minnesota, I know Mike watched him recently. That power play is insane.
Yeah.
He plays the bumper there. He's 6'4", 220. He's a college free agent. He's got good hands. He was a defense first guy, and his offense has been coming around the last 2 years. His skating's good enough. This is the kind of guy the Flyers should be all over and trying to woo after the season because, and of course you have to wait till August, but he could be a 4th-line guy for them, a 4th-line center at 6'4", 220. This is what the organization likes. This is what Tortorella likes.
Sure.
Like, it plays right into that. And so I think, like Jackson Nelson, there's a lot of teams that are going to want him because of that size and the fact that his offense has been coming out the last 2 years, and he plays defensively responsible. So it'll be interesting to see. I also like Parker Ford with Providence. I was surprised he didn't get drafted. He's a smaller guy. I got to see. I think he's about 5'10", but he's a really good skater, good all-around player. He is a guy that, it's funny. He's from Rhode Island, so, he got to play at his home team. Oh, actually, you know what? Oh, no, he is in his final year. This year, 26 points, 36 games. He's a bottom 6 guy, but he could be a potential 4th-line guy in a team that doesn't use him as like a Tyler Mott type, a team that kind of uses the 4th line to score a little bit.
Right.
So I would think he gets some interest. All right, I'm going to bring up Emil Andre because whoever this is, Pietro, is asking about it. So Anthony Sanfilippo talked about it the other day. I wrote about Andre about a week and a half ago saying his original plan was he would end the season. His contract is ended with HV 71. He would then sign an ELC and come play in the NHL, right? That was the plan.
Right.
I don't know if that plan has changed or not, but the oddity is Sanfilippo reported that he's going to be on a PTO and come over and play a while with the Phantoms and then maybe sign the ELC. And, I've spoken to a few people about this.
Yeah.
And honestly, with the kind of year he had in the SHL, even though his contract's up, I'm sure the SHL would take him back.
Right, yeah.
That's it. That's what I thought.
And many feel that why would he sign the PTO? Like, why would he do that? Yeah. That's what you do with a guy that isn't a 2nd-round pick. That's what you do with a guy that's a late-round pick. It's very surprising to me, Eck, if this is the Flyers' stance on this.
Yeah, that is weird.
Well, first of all, I looked at when we talked about him earlier. He before this year, had played the last 2 years in the second division in Sweden. So this year he plays in the SHL, and he had a decent year, 26 points, 51 games. He's not on his ELC yet, and I've seen European players who are not on their ELCs come over after the SHL season or after their season in Europe is done, come over, sign the ATO or the PTO to cover them insurance-wise, not only, but to put them under contract, and then go back to Europe and play another year. Now, he's a second-round pick, and the clock isn't running out on him.
He's only 21.
Right. Well, no, but I'm talking about like if he was an OHL player,
Right.
he would have been signed by last June. This time around, they have 4. I think they have 4 years,
Right.
so they could let him go back to Sweden.
But it's a risky game to play.
Right. I mean, more than likely, what you could do is sign him to the ELC and then have have this at the entry level slide and let the deal skip a year.
Correct. But why didn't they do that? Why are we here in PTO? Like
maybe they just want, maybe they're holding his feet to the fire and they want to see what they have. I mean, you said it yourself. He's 5'8" and 181 pounds. So size
against his peer group in the World Juniors, he was the best guy on his team. He is playing against men.
Yeah.
This guy, or you don't. And if they don't, then I'm going to say the Flyers still don't believe they can have smaller players on their roster. I don't want to say that, but right now that's kind of the way they're acting.
I'm, the Brinkat, Caulfield, these both, they make me crazy every time I see them play. Like that these guys are screaming for them to pick them after the draft, and
I know,
especially Caulfield. We were like, geez, that was nuts.
No, but
and the weird thing is they're coming out of an era, and it's funny now with Danny Briere as GM. if that could change, Russ. I mean that was my thinking. It's like he's got to embrace a guy like this because of course
he's a defenseman, a 5'8" defense. How many 5? Okay, I can think. I understand that, but okay. Torrey Krug, Sam Girard.
There's more than that.
And there's a few more. There's a few more, but not many more.
Grzelcyk's not big.
Quinn Hughes isn't that big, is he?
No, Quinn Hughes is 6 foot.
Yeah, 6 foot.
5'11". He's 5'11". He's
just very thin.
Grzelcyk is only 5'10".
But Russ, you can count on 2 hands. That's
I get it, but it doesn't mean. See, here's the argument with that. You're signing him to an ELC. The Flyers have signed way worse players.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
To an ELC. Grzelcyk's listed 5'10". I'd be surprised. But anyhow, it's not like they can't use him in Lehigh. Lehigh's not even a guarantee to make the playoffs. So as an organizational player,
you're preaching to the choir.
And he's a power play specialist. That's the other thing. The Flyers are lacking power play specialists in their organization too.
Well, let me
Ryan Ellis in the chat room. Ryan Ellis is a good example too in the chat room. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I was gonna say let me transition because one of the guys who was in the draft when we were in Montreal last June or July, Russ, that we were debating was Lane Hudson. He was one of the 10 finalists for the Hobey Baker, and I just wanted to go through some of the names quickly because Hudson had a fantastic year with BU.
He is a smaller defenseman. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I got. Sorry.
Okay.
I'll talk to you tomorrow. Sorry.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks, everyone.
Just to talk about the finalists for the Hobey Baker. 2 players on the same line, Logan Cooley and Matthew Nyes from University of Minnesota. Adam Fantilli, who's probably going to be the 2nd or 3rd pick in the upcoming draft in Nashville. Sean Farrell, who is a Montreal draft pick at Harvard. Colin Graff. I don't know much about him, Russ.
I don't know a lot about Graff. Everybody else I know a lot about.
Yeah, from Quinnipiac. Devin Levi from Northeastern.
I've seen Graff play, but I haven't seen him enough. Yeah, Devin Levi, we know, yeah.
Another Quinnipiac player, Yaniv Perret.
Yeah, I mean, again, I know Lippman better than I know the others. I've watched a few Quinnipiac games the last few years, but not enough to say for Hobey. I can't tell you.
Yeah, so we have 3 goaltenders picked: Levi, Perret, and Blake. Is it Piat? I have always. What's that?
Patella. Blake Patella.
Thank you. From Michigan Tech, and Jason Poland from Western Michigan.
Right. So I would be surprised if Fantilli wins, even though he is far and away the best player on this list. It's not even close. Like, you don't get seasons like he's having. Mike and I were marveling offline, like 27 goals, 60 points. In this era is a lot. Like, I know you can go back and you could look up guys that had like 100 points, but that's when college hockey was kind of lousy. Korea had like 100 points or something. It was something insane like that at Maine. But that doesn't really happen anymore, not much. 60 is really great. And the fact is, I don't know if he's going to win it. I think he should, though, but I don't know if he will.
Yeah, I mean, not to say that you eliminate the freshmen, because the freshmen in this group are so good. I mean, Cooley, Fantilli, Hudson are all freshmen. But we were talking about this before. Usually freshmen don't win unless they're just like superstars. And, it's possible. I mean, I
was talking about true freshmen, which are even rarer.
Right. Now, Levi was a finalist last year and is a junior. That might give him, and now goaltenders. I mean, the kid that the Leafs signed didn't he win the Hobie Baker, or the goalie from Minnesota Duluth?
McKay.
Yeah, Dryden McKay. Yeah, he was the Hobie Baker winner, and so they're not going to say no. We're not going to pick a goalie if the goalie.
So Eichel was the last one in 2015, and before that, it's Korea. That's it. Those are the freshman Hobie Baker winners for you.
Yeah, and Eichel was a superstar. So
right.
Yeah, so I would say more than likely Cooley, Fantilli, or Hudson are not going to win. So honestly, it's like you would have to say Levi, and maybe Patella.
I could see that one of the goalies getting it. I could,
or Matthew Nyes.
Yeah, Nyes has a chance.
Nyes has a chance. So it'll
Nyes should be a finalist. Fantilli should be a finalist. I just don't know if Fantilli's going to win, but he should.
Yeah, 60 points in 37 games for.
I wouldn't give it to Farrell. Farrell, I see more. He's really good. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think he would win the Hobie compared to those guys. He will be very good for Montreal. Hudson someday should be good for Montreal. Listen, Hudson is going to go through what we're talking about with Emile Andre, in that he's a smaller defenseman. But again, there's going to be a time in this game where a few more creep into it, and you can't be an organization that decides we're not going to go there because the numbers don't say it works.
Yeah.
You have to believe in a player.
Yeah. 11 games on the schedule tonight. I would say Pittsburgh Rangers will be pretty interesting.
That's a good one to watch.
Now, weird, and I'm pretty sure that one of these games was rescheduled because of a weather event or something of that nature. But the Lightning are playing in Newark against the Devils for the second time in 3 nights. It's sort of like a playoff scenario where so they figured, okay, well, Tampa Bay is going to be in Newark, on Tuesday, so we may as well have them make up that game, or the other one was the makeup game. So they're playing against the Devils, and the Devils lost 4-1. Bruins in Winnipeg, Stars Oilers. I'll be checking up in.
That's a good game to check out.
Yeah, and I think those are the best games. So
I did want to mention this.
Sure.
I'm laughing because Tony Soprano says, remember when Spencer Fu was supposed to be good too? I was not a Spencer Fu guy, so don't put me in that grouping.
Well, and this is the thing. Honestly, it's like the undrafted college free agent. There are very few instances that these guys end up being really good.
Sure.
People think I'm Leaf centric here, but Tyler Bozak was a Grand Slam home run.
Yes.
When it came, he was an undrafted free agent who came out, I think, out of the BCHL or the AJHL.
I think BCHL.
BCHL, and one of those, and went to the University of Denver and signed a contract and was now playing with Kessel helped, but he was a really good player for a number of years. He was a home run. Tim Thomas is the all-timer at this point. Right, but Tim Thomas went to Finland and then came back.
I know, but still.
But yeah, and GSM says Nyes is overrated. Well, I mean, we'll see. I mean,
All right, so I'm going to say this to Esmir. First thing, Seamus Casey will be a Devil. He'll play. I think he could be a second pairing guy. I was never on the Matt Gilroy train. He was overaged at the time. He was doing really well. When the Rangers signed him, I expected nothing. I was at that final for the Frozen Four in Washington. I was not impressed. He was, again, the oldest guy there by far. I didn't think Matt Gilroy was going to be a good NHLer. Sorry, I just didn't.
We'll finish off with this because we always
I like
finish off.
Barlow. I do. Go ahead.
We always finish off the post with a food take, and since I think it's going to be off the market after tomorrow, have you ever had a Shamrock Shake? And
Yes.
if you have, is it thumbs up or thumbs down?
No, it's thumbs up. I'm a big mint guy to begin with.
Yes.
I did have my Shamrock Shake this year. I will tell you, though, they're getting to the point. This is a worry for McDonald's. It's almost a little too minty, and I love mint. But, like, if you use the wrong mint as far as, like, what you're putting in for the flavoring, you could overpower it, and it's getting close to that.
Well, I'll just say this. I got my one. I don't get more than one. I have to do it. And I think the thing that I still like it. I still like it a lot, but they're putting whipped cream on top of it. They're doing like Starbucks.
Yeah. They all do.
And I'm like, and I didn't realize that because I don't get shakes, and like I get them one. And last year they didn't put it on there, and this year they did, and I'm like, okay, this is gilding the lily. This is overdoing it.
What did you think about the mint? Do you think it was a little stronger than
it was a little stronger. But it was not overpowered. It wasn't like you were like drinking Scope or something like that.
No. But you know what? It's like more like cream de mint than like mint.
Yes.
That's what it's more like.
Yeah. So
that's our food take.
That's our food take, and we'll probably repeat that on Off the Post this weekend.
Probably.
Okay. For the departed Eklund, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.
Steak and Shake stink.